Hello, little ghosts, and welcome to me and Quinn's playing through a couple of days of Kingdom. This is actually Kingdom New Lands. You gonna say anything, Quinns? Hello.
Oh, hi, everybody. I didn't want to... It was an atmospheric intro. There was fog on the moors.
It's fair. All right, let's go. Let's roll back to some atmosphere. I am the Queen of Kingdom, following a ghost, potentially a ghost of my past. Every time you play this game, you're a different kind of leader. It's kind of randomized. And you've got to start your kingdom. As with all kingdoms, with a small fire. So if you haven't seen it, we made a video about this on Tuesday this week, which is going to take you through why this game is amazing. I'd really recommend going and watching that video first. But if you've seen that, then this is us just going through, and so you can see some of the mechanics of the game a little bit more.
I should be doing my chatter, but I'm kind of captivated by the dawn, you know? It feels like this holy moment in time that you don't want to talk over.
It is a really beautiful game. The way the landscapes shift in this is really fascinating. So obviously you see I'm riding through the woods here, and you can see that the light dims out as you enter and go into them, and that was a focal point in the video I did, because I love it. Everything just gets dark and less visible. But then within the woods you get these little encampments full of paupers, I guess?
Well, there's a lost people, you know, people who certainly... Again, storytelling, they don't seem to have anything to do, but as soon as you give them any money or a cause, they rush back, which makes me think that they're almost like, whatever happened to your kingdom, these are your old subjects.
Desolate is maybe the word, I guess, because obviously that can happen to your people when they get battered by the monsters.
Well, right, which answers the question of, you know, I think who these people are. They're people who've been overcome by the darkness once already.
They got battered, unlucky. And what is lovely, though, is these little encampments will remain there for as long as you don't deforest the areas. And you can obviously, you can pay the men to go and cut down the trees, and the thick forest behind you will actually disappear, which means that these little islands that basically exist as the world, they'll actually slowly shift around you, and you start to realize after a while that if you keep deforesting, then suddenly it's just plains and plains and plains. And there are advantages to that, but there are also disadvantages. And it's the sort of game where, as I say, it can be quite frustrating the first few times you play, because if you make bad decisions, then you'll lose, and you won't know you're going to lose for quite a while. Although I have said, have you played this version of the game, Quinns?
I have, yeah. I played the first version and, did think it was beautiful, but got frustrated and played the new version, and completely agreed with your video that it's funny. I totally agreed with your comparison to Sunless Sea, that it is a game where as soon as you start fixing stuff that's wrong with it, you are actually fighting the tonality of the world and the atmosphere, you know? As soon as you make this a game where it's easy to succeed and progress the different worlds, you're no longer a monarch who is sort of... Well, a monarch is tied to their land, right? Like, that is the sort of sad thing about a monarch. It's kind of a prison for you, because it's your world. And then Kingdom New Lands means that you can just leave when you're done.
Yeah. And it does, in the way, it softens the fact that... Because
Look at the animation on that stream, by the way.
It's so good.
All the pixels just falling.
It's one of these things, actually. It's funny. There's been a bit of fatigue recently with pixel art in games, and there was obviously a massive surge of it about probably close to 5-10 years ago now.
About the same time that 3D started becoming too expensive.
Yes, exactly. And I think a lot of the time people go, oh, it's another pixelated game. But it has to be said, there is an incredible craft to taking very simple pixel art and making it come to life.
Oh,
as
absolutely.
much as this game does.
I think, I don't think anyone necessarily got tired of great pixel art, of people for whom this was like truly a craft. And Kingdom shows that, we still absolutely love pixel art. If it's, I don't know, you know what? I think a lot of pixel art falls into the trap of nostalgia, of just trying to recreate the look of 16 8-bit video games, that kind of thing. And there's tons of that on Steam. What Kingdom does is show that pixel art is actually just a medium, something that you can paint with. And because obviously this doesn't look like a 16-bit game, it's someone using the medium of pixel art to create a new artistic vision of a world, and completely succeeding, and really exciting player bases as well, you know? Absolutely. Are you marking these trees for destruction?
Yeah. You seen Fern Gully? This is me. I'm Fern Gully, the man. Actually, I'm a lady. One of the things, it's a subtle thing in this, but I love the fact that every time you start a game, it's just like, yeah, this is your monarch. It might be a king, it might be a queen. And you can be like, no, I don't want that. And you can shift it.
Can you?
But Yeah. I think you can press a button, but again, it doesn't tell you. I think you just do something and it'll be like, no.
If you
actually.
just kick up a fuss and start pressing random buttons,
Yeah,
it's like,
but
okay,
for like anyone who doesn't
you're throwing
care,
a fit.
it's kind of wonderful that it's like you might be a king and then you're a queen, but yeah, it's funny being able to leave on these the boats it does remove some of the terror, because in the original version of the game it was just you keep riding and keep riding and keep riding until you just hit a massive wall that was a portal to an undead or whatever, and you're like, oh god, and this sense that you couldn't get away from that.
Whereas in this you run away.
Yeah.
In the new game.
I loved how ominous that was in the original game, of it being like, what do I do?
I mean,
they're getting more and more powerful, and you just want to keep your people together and keep your kingdom together, but you kind of felt like you might not be able to.
So if I'm, completely honest, there's so much to praise about this game, and I had such a great time with it. But I can't think of anything from last year where there was a bigger sort of gulch between me starting to play it and be like, oh my god, this is so amazing, it's so exciting. And then as soon as the difficulty curve ramps up towards the end, and sort of trying your level best and then failing, and then being expected to just start again, try, fail. And I got immensely frustrated. And there was just such a gap, between what this game feels like to begin with and then what it ends up becoming, because video games.
I think there's I found that incredibly true as well, and I wonder what the solution is, because you really, in a way, you do need this threat. Like, the threat is important. Like, having to actually build, defenses and build arrow towers to keep your people safe is important.
You need that kind of danger.
But as soon as that danger becomes overwhelming and just becomes the game, it's not fun at all.
Well, the whole game is about a timer. I think that's where they really trap themselves. Once you've got this wonderful day-night cycle that's so much of the atmosphere of Kingdom and so much of the threat, like I think the moment where the game pivots for me and starts not working is whether you see the day-night cycle as atmospheric or whether you see the day-night cycle as a clock, which you really start to. Like, when I got frustrated, I started looking at guides online, and it's like, day 1, do A, B, C, D, and E. Day 2, do B, C, D, E. And it's like, oh my god, what? I'm like, it's a stopwatch? That's what it is?
I know exactly what you mean, actually. And an interesting side thing I noticed when I was looking through on Steam is, and I think this was just really a reflection of how it was strange to me, because it was just totally different to how I see this game and how I feel about this game. But looking at how other people talked about it and how other people felt about it, I found quite surprising. And one of the comments was talking about on Steam about somebody was saying, so I guess this game's dead then. And it was like, what? And it was this idea that because the developer had stopped doing really frequent updates, that it was over. And that to me is a very modern way of thinking about games. But to me especially...
That's so depressing.
It is kind of depressing, but to me it was kind of more that it was something that solidified the chasm between what maybe a lot of people who play games think about games and how we look at them were cool ghosts, really. It was...
You reminded me of... you mentioned Sunless Sea in your great video about this, which is only 10 minutes long. You should totally go and watch it. But one of the things that caught Fail Better by surprise when they released Sunless Sea, because you've played Sunless Sea, Matt, you're well aware that it's about scraping a living. So much of it is, you can get money, but often you're encouraged to give that money away or fund mad expeditions, or you lose it, or... so much of Sunless Sea is coming back to London, not with a heaving hold full of, gold, but oh, I made no money and everyone is dead.
Yeah.
Because, actually, that fits the world of sailing better. They stated that their goals for Sunless Sea was, loneliness and going out to sea, even though it's awful because it's there. And that's so much of what the history of human exploration is.
Yeah.
And one of the things that they found maddening and weird was so much of the community that funded Sunless Sea at Kickstarter and loved it and bought it were like, well, why can't I make money? Where are the trade routes to make money? Where's my elite path of I'll go to this port and then this port?
And it's fascinating that they really did obviously pander to that in many ways by having all of these different ships you could buy that are really expensive. They put in systems whereby if you're looking for an economic game, there are things to spend that economy on. But yeah, no, it is interesting, the split. And it's funny to me, this is such a subtle experience, even the moments now loud. Just
oh man, I loved your point about how the weather the weather is so perfect in Kingdom, because you're right that as a game that is atmospheric with a gentle game, the fact that the weather is so atmospheric and actually does change the game with obviously no text, no anything. If it's foggy, if it's rainy, you lose you can kind of get lost in the rain. You lose ability because there's less light to track how far away you are.
Yeah.
So good.
It's amazing, but then it is for me such a simple. Come on, kill a deer, guy. It's really hard to get to kill a deer. It is a simple, like, little emotional experience for me. And when I kind of start bashing up against the edges of it as a game, it becomes frustrating. But it's fascinating to see other people approaching it purely as a game and looking at strategies and updates. And to me, I think, it does make me kind of feel a bit sad.
Well, I think the reason that I know that you and I are right is that if you look at this as a game, it's a sort of basic tower defense game. It is an average game. But if you look at it as a work of atmosphere and a work of storytelling, it's superb.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you look at the pixel art and the gentle audio, if you look at the way it tells stories very subtly with no cues and no faces, it's extremely good. As a game, it's not. Therefore, you and I are right to say, like, to praise this game for its atmosphere and to talk about the atmosphere. And everyone who's pushing the developers to make it a game are kind of wrong. You know, this is something that we never used to have, you know, but like so many games ship in an unfinished state. Like, I'm reminded of The Long Dark, which I did a cog watch on, not for Cool Ghosts, but for Rock Paper Shotgun. Or maybe for Cool Ghosts? I forget. But The Long Dark is a great game that came out in early access, and they want to tell a story with it, right? Mm-hmm. They want to tell this story of people surviving in the Arctic. But the community has latched onto the beta, which was just like a survival game.
Right.
And so now you've got the developers who have a community of people being like, oh, there's not enough to do. And they're like, yeah, we want to tell a story. While the community is like, well, I want more things to kill.
Yeah.
Like, I want you to turn this into Don't Starve. And that is so odd to me. The difference between what mechanics you need to sell a Kickstarter, what mechanics you need to interest people versus like what your craft is as a designer.
It is a fascinating thing. It's kind of a side point to do with games which are not really like this, but I find the cycle of survival games in general and building games to be fascinating in the fact that it seems like, you know, new ones have just been popped up, like Conan, which is hugely popular again. And it feels like one of these classic things where half of what you're buying when you buy a video game is the promise of something. And with early access, it's almost like that's the zenith of that, in the fact that people are buying survival games which then disappoint them, but then they just buy a new one. And it's always forever living on this future promise of something which will never be. And every generation they get more and more gorgeous and more impressive technically, but they never can achieve what people want, because what people want is infinity and it's impossible.
It reminds me a lot of even just the cycle of getting free to play silly things on the iPad. Like, I always buy, you know, download like the Farmvilles and the Heydays and stuff, going like, I will have a wonderful fun, and then that's not what the business model is.
No.
So,
but I mean, the question I have with this is what would I do to make, because I love this exploratory nature, I love this going around, and I love the fear. How do you marry that? How do you have that?
Well, who are you making it for?
Yeah.
That is the first question. We need to define our terms. If you're asking me to make Kingdom the greatest sort of game on balance for everybody, I think you make it really easy. I think you ignore the difficulty curve, and I think you make it a 6-hour game, and then you're done. You know, I think you just screw like difficulty curves, like, because the worst thing in Kingdom is failing. That's the most unpleasant moment. That's what drives so many people away.
Yeah.
So remove the failure. You know, have it so most people can muddle through. Have it so that you can always rebuild, and then have people play it for 6 hours and put it down, rather than playing it for this amazing 4 hours and then getting more and more infuriated by it.
I think you might be right. Look at this. It's just,
listen to the crickets and everything.
It is occasionally just an astoundingly beautiful game. And even actually when it's tense, you know, when you have the dark moon, that means the enemies are tougher. Yeah. Again, frightening. Like, what's going on? You kind of end up riding back being like, what is this? What's happening? And you're never really sure. Just watching these little people mill around. It is that funny thing of I sometimes feel like this is more representative of what God games should be like than a lot of God games.
How do you mean?
The fact that you haven't got the micro control over things. You're in charge of the kingdom, but you don't get to micromanage it. You know, you put money in the right places and then things happen, but you don't specifically really get to control the people. They just sort of mill about doing their own thing. And sometimes that's frustrating, because you're like, why are you doing that? Why are you not doing this? But I kind of like the distance of it, and the fact that you have to rely on these people to protect you from these little creatures that come every night. But you kind of, and I think that again is why it becomes frustrating when it does feel like more of a combat game when you're really up against it.
Well, here's the grand irony, right? I think you're right that a lot of people want, the dream, the thing that goes on forever, the thing that lets them build the supremely big tower. The thing in the case of Kingdom, the thing that lets them win and build the kingdom. But they also expect a game, and I don't think you can have both, because a game you can lose, a game you can lose interest in, or you can lose your way, or you can lose against the enemies. Whereas the way that you build these grand, superior narratives that everybody wants is actually just to thin out the difficulty curve, to make it more accessible, to make it so that you don't put the game down, but that it ends. And I think people don't necessarily want an ending, but they have to accept that there needs to be one in order to, get what they want. They can't... They either have to buy into the dream or they have to buy into the reality, and they want both, and they can't have both.
I love a good horse in a game, and the horses in this game are great. I like the fact that you can as well just find better horses sometimes. Swap your horse now, get your money back.
Really?
Yeah, there's tons of little things that can be in the worlds, and that's one of them. Although it's funny, there are tons of things in this game that are not explained, but there's one thing that I just never got, and I wish I did, because you can actually recharge your horse's stamina by stopping and letting it eat grass, but there has to be grass on the floor, and it's such a tiny thing that I did not notice, but actually you can top up the stamina. But again, it's that kind of weird, not quite ecological thing, but just an eye for detail in terms of ecological shifts, that when you start building out your base, you can see no grass. And so there is this strange battle. It's not making a statement or anything. I'm not saying, you shouldn't overbuild, but it's just the fact that there are costs. Things change.
I think that's where I started to struggle with when you're building the farmhouses. So much of building defenses and weapons and paying for bows and arrows makes perfect sense, but once you get into building the farmyards around your town, stuff that you buy doesn't actually upgrade in the way that you think it will.
Yeah.
I think that's a point where the game is thinner, and a point when I had to look at a guide.
Yeah, because it's kind of a case of you then start to go, well, why are they doing that? And you start to realize actually you're making
them live outside
your city. You're making
tactical
tactical decisions that you don't know you're making.
Yeah, when you're just throwing money at people.
And it's funny, some of that stuff they've realized, I think one of the major changes here is really important. This is a major shift from the original version of the game, where it shows you basically, in the original game, I think it was just 2 signs each direction, whereas this now it has a little workshop and has rocks, which gives you a sense of what you might be building. But originally it was just I didn't do it for ages because it was quite expensive, and it just said left and right, and you do it and it builds a bloody ballista style thing.
Builds a catapult.
Not a ballista, a catapult. Get your medieval weaponry right, man. You've been doing this for long enough. But so they have improved a lot of the signage, but there are still...
Oh, it's the ill moon.
issues. The ill moon's coming.
This would be a great time to sign off before the ill moon's consequences are fall upon us.
They're not even that bad, but oh god, it's terrifying. Let's leave.
The first time this happens, though, ooh.
So that has been us playing some Kingdom New Lands. Funnily enough, not a lot has really happened while we've been playing it, but you know what?
That's how I like it, Matt.
Generally the gist of the game. So if you want to ride around on a horse while not a lot happens, then you really should, because this game is a good time for not a long time, but that's absolutely fine.
Worth the money,
Definitely.
Probably.
If you value 10 hours of really good experience and then being you know what, I'm probably done, then yeah, Kingdom New Lands is really, really something. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Goodbye, everybody.
If you've enjoyed watching us messing around in Kingdom slightly and just generally talking about design and becoming slightly soporific because of the beautiful clouds, etc., then you can watch more of this sort of thing on coolghosts.net.
We recommend games that are a little sideways, little different, games that we think are the best games ever.
Yeah, often, quite frequently the best. And pop over to the website, say hello, look at some other videos. Thanks very much for watching.
Cheers, everybody.
Bye.